In another edition of Small Town Canada Spotlight, we'll be diving into the history of the small fishing community of Peggy's Cove, Nova Scotia, and its significant lighthouse. Many come from all over the world to view this picturesque beacon as it stands proudly overlooking the Atlantic Ocean, but it also has an interesting past. Peggy's Cove is a humble fishing village that was founded in 1811. Through the Nova Scotia Registry of Grants, King George III issued a grant entitling 6 families to over 800 acres of land. As time went on, more families began to settle in the area, leading the community to develop a sense of self-sufficiency. The residents centered their lives around the cove, with fishing serving as their main source of income. Still, they also planted gardens where the soil was fertile and used the vast pastures surrounding the village for cattle. A schoolhouse was built in 1839, along with a lighthouse, church, general store, and post office. The village was most likely named by the French explorer Samuel de Champlain, who ventured to Nova Scotia in the early 1600s. He named the region St. Marguerite's Bay after his mother, Marguerite Leroy. Marguerite's Cove was the name originally given to the cove, but it became known after time as Peggy's Cove, as Peggy is a common nickname for Margaret. Folklore suggests a different story. The lore explains that the village's name originated from a book, This is Peggy's Cove, by local artist William de Garth. He wrote about a young woman who was the sole survivor of a shipwreck at Halibut Rock near the cove. The woman stayed in the area, eventually marrying one of the local men in 1800. She became known as Peggy of the Cove, attracting visitors from around the bay. The village eventually changed its name to Peggy's Cove after her nickname. In 1860, a petition was brought forward by George Garrison Sr. and other inhabitants of St. Margaret's Bay, asking for a lighthouse to be built. No immediate action was taken at the time, but the Board of Works finally awarded Murphy and Lawler a $1,690 contract on June 20, 1867, to build a lighthouse on Peggy's Point. Built in 1868, the first Peggy's Point lighthouse included a wooden house topped by a beacon. Despite being referred to many as Peggy's Cove Lighthouse, in government records it is listed as Peggy's Point Lighthouse on the original list of lights published by the Canadian Coast Guard. The lighthouse's first keeper was Edward Horne, who, each morning, lit a kerosene oil lamp magnified by a catoptric reflector, a silver-plated mirror, creating the red light which marked the eastern entrance to St. Margaret's Bay. In 1872, the upper part of the wooden lighthouse was finished to create 2 bedrooms for the keeper and his family, along with a storeroom. In 1877, to address complaints about the lighthouse vibrating in strong winds, 4 wooden supports were added, 1 at each corner to stabilize the structure. A 5th-order lens was installed in the lantern room in place of the multiple lamps and reflectors in March 1897. Less than 3 months later, an explosion in the lantern room damaged the lens. The old catoptric apparatus had to be moved back to its proper position, and all 24 panels of glass in the lantern room had to be replaced after the powerful explosion. In 1915, an octagon-shaped lighthouse made of concrete and reinforced steel replaced the old structure. The Standard Construction Company of Halifax built the 30-foot-tall building under contract for $2,456. A 4th-order lens and an 8-foot-tall lantern were also placed at the top of the new lighthouse for $1,945.92. This lighthouse is the one still standing at Peggy's Cove today.
America, thanks to ample warning by the Weather Bureau, New York and New England were ready for the hurricane codenamed Edna.
The old keeper's dwelling remained next to the current lighthouse until it was damaged by Hurricane Edna in 1954 and subsequently removed.
Edna left a death roll of 17 before blowing itself out in Canada.
Robert Manuel, the keeper of the lighthouse since 1934, announced in March 1958 that he was no longer interested in looking after the light. Since the lighthouse had been connected to commercial power since 1949, a time switch was installed to control the beacon after Manuel stepped down. Due to some reliability issues with the power, York Manuel, son of Robert, was hired as a caretaker on April 9, 1958. He served in this position until November 1966. Between 1975 and 2009, Peggy's Point Lighthouse served a uniquely different function: a post office. During the summer, Canada Post had an office in the tower where visitors could mail letters and postcards, each receiving a rare cancellation stamp featuring a silhouette of the lighthouse. Canada Post closed the Lighthouse post office in November 2009, citing mold growth as a safety hazard. The lighthouse was decommissioned in June 2010 by the Canadian Coast Guard, along with almost all lighthouses in Canada. It was classified as a federal heritage building due to its historical association and its architectural and environmental values. Today, Peggy's Point Lighthouse is managed and maintained by Fisheries and Oceans Canada and is a popular tourist attraction. Known for its picturesque ocean views and recognized as a symbol of Nova Scotia's maritime heritage, Peggy's Point Lighthouse is easily the most photographed lighthouse in Canada and has become a recognized landmark worldwide.